Okay, welcome to another episode of Mr. K is Wrong, where I look at somebody I knew back in my high school days and debunk his memes and talking points that he posted on social media, specifically Facebook. So today we're going to look at how Mr. K reinvigorates my anarchic perspective on borders and boundaries. So, what's the meme that he posted this time? Well, above it, he typed the word MAGA rather pathetically and sadly, and the meme itself shows a map of the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Canada is called the 51st state, Greenland is called Trumpland, the ocean is called Anti European Moat, the Gulf of Mexico is now called Gulf of America, and Mexico is called the other side of the wall. See, isn't that funny? Ha 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 ha. So, from my perspective, the meme embodies several concepts that are fundamentally opposed to actual freedom. So, you have nationalism and territorial expansion. That's one of the main subjects of the meme, of course. Memes like this actually move me further along into what could be called the anarchist tradition. So I can say I traditionally reject nationalism and the expansion of state territories, viewing them as mechanisms that reinforce state power and suppress individual autonomy. In this case, it's a very pathetic thing, and I suppose it's that way in all cases. But with this one, it's somebody wanting to attack allies. Actually, people who aren't even really enemies in any meaningful sense of the word. The anti-European moat. Like, what's that all about? We're not enemies with the whole of Europe. Neither are we enemies with the whole of Canada or Mexico. But I guess that's the direction these loons, these clowns are wanting to head in. So, you know, there's that. But like the anarchist Pierre Joseph Proudhon, who is a foundational figure in anarchism, he argued against nationalism, and I kind of do as well. I suggest that true liberation involves transcending national identities and militaristic endeavors. And obviously, somebody who supports this meme does not believe that. They think, oh, if we follow the path of the conqueror, we will find some sort of salvation, down that road of folly. Oh dear, how wonderful that will be. It'll be like heaven unfolded upon the earth. Of course, more often than not, it ends up looking more like hell. But oh well, the trail of bodies that we leave in our wake and the inevitable degree of national shame when we look back at the terrors of the past. I guess we can just shrug those off right now because they haven't happened yet. Well, they've happened in the past. We've seen where this road ends up by looking at examples of territorialism in the past, and we know that it's a pretty dangerous and deadly and actually stupid way to go. That's why, at a certain point in human history, there was the idea of the United Nations. Maybe we wouldn't be constantly fighting with each other and all that kind of stuff. Maybe things could be settled in a more diplomatic manner, and we wouldn't need to be lobbing bombs at each other or shooting at each other. And, you know, sanctions, military sanctions and all that kind of stuff are kind of favored over overt war. Although, of course, sanctions themselves can be devastating and even downright genocidal, as we have seen with the country of Iraq facing sanctions that were basically genocidal. And of course, the attempts to cut off water and food and medical aid to the Palestinians, that's also basically a genocidal tactic. But, we're supposed to just shrug all that off and want to reinvigorate the war machine, get on that war horse and spur it. But anyway, the meme's portrayal of annexing Canada and renaming regions of the world to assert U.S. dominance reflects nationalist and imperialist and childish ambitions that anarchists critique as tools of state oppression and control. And you know what? I agree with them. I'd be hard pressed to disagree with that. A lot of this is, imperialism and state control with very little actual logical defense for it. I suppose you could do some mental gymnastics and say, "Oh, we're just trying to protect the world, be the world's police, and for that we need to expand our base of operations." But I think really only some of the most foolish people on Earth are going to fall for that one. And the depiction of Greenland as Trumpland and the rebranding of geographical features to emphasize American supremacy align with imperialistic ideologies. And frankly, it looks like a child on the sandbox, just playing games and, that sort of thing. Um, so, much like the anarchists, I would say that I oppose imperialism, viewing it as an extension of state domination over diverse cultures and communities. So Murray Bookchin, an influential anarchist thinker, highlighted that nationalism often leads to oppressive state apparatuses that override cultural identities and enforce uniformity. And that is, of course, what we're seeing right now. There's sort of like a cult identity, a cult uniformity that's happening because of, well, this whole I guess advancement of domination by, I guess, corporate interests, you could call them, because that's really what a lot of this boils down to. The military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex, you name it, money is being tied into this. And the whole Greenland thing, too, you have people wanting to access resources that were previously not available, but because of the melting ice over there, oh, what do you know? We now have access to those things. So, hey, let's greedily try to invade, you know, nose our way into their territory and just take it over. Because, we're the bully on the playground. We're the bully in the sandbox. We're gonna rule everything that happens, and we'll just pretend it's a legitimate process, and there is no legitimate process for that. But hey, it's something we want to do, so we'll just act as if it's valid. So the meme's imagery resonates with imperialistic narratives, which I would argue perpetuate hierarchies and centralized authority and all of that kind of fun stuff. The funny thing about all of this MAGA stuff is that they act like they're rebels, yet actually what they're doing is clinging to centralized authority, and they're clinging to ideas that are really outdated. So they're not really rebels in any meaningful sense. They're only rebels against good taste and having, morals and standards about things. And as far as recent developments go, you could definitely make note that the meme mirrors uh, a lot of what Donald Trump has said. He has suggested incorporating Canada as the 51st state and acquiring Greenland. And there are things he said that have sparked controversy and discussions about American expansionism. And really, we're at a time where we really shouldn't be trying to expand. We should just be trying to sort the current problems out that we've got. I think everyone would agree on that as a sort of a general statement. I don't think I don't think the idea of, you know, expanding the territory even more further out has that much appeal among the general public, and especially not the global general public. Um, but I guess if you watch Fox News, you probably don't really care that much about issues related to American expansionism. If the orange doofus says something, you just say, "Oh, that must be the way that is." If he says jump, I'm going to say how high. And you really have to be kind of high to believe that any of the stuff is a good idea. High on something. Patriotism, I guess. But anyway, these propositions have been met with resistance from Canadian officials and from Mexican officials and people in Greenland, and they've raised eyebrows and concerns about sovereignty and self determination, which I guess are alien concepts. Those sound like liberal buzzwords or something, so who cares? Um, Again, if you read Fox News or the New York Post, you're probably not going to have that much of a problem with this particular agenda, because they're just going to go along with whatever the the felon suggests. Um, Again, like the anarchists, I would view these developments as manifestations of state overreach and the imposition of authority over autonomous regions. And of course, it was authority that was not really asked for, which actually does make a difference. It's it's different, for example, we've if we voted for something and it happened here, or if they voted for something and that's something included having the United States uh, come in and sort of take over. Like if a legitimate vote was taken on it and there was a legitimate sale or whatever it would be, that would actually be a somewhat different story. You could still critique it, and maybe some of those critiques would be valid, but at the end of the day, it would just have a different, even a different feel to it, you know. Whereas what's happening here, it feels more invasive and frankly kind of delusional somehow. You know, I guess people don't really care about delusions of grandeur when it's being applied on a scale like this. They might only critique it in some cases when it's you know a jerk of a neighbor or some. But we're being the jerks of a neighbor right now, and the bully on the playground. And it's really just an embarrassment. It's a shame that this is happening. So much of what's going on is just embarrassing. So in conclusion, from again what could be called an anarchist viewpoint, the meme symbolizes the entrenchment of state power, nationalism, and imperialism, all of which are antithetical to some very basic principles. I would prefer voluntary cooperation and individual freedom rather than being subjected to the bully on the playground telling me that I have to, you know, leave, I have to skedaddle and let him control the territory. It's his turf. and I have to do things his way, and he gets to steal my lunch money, and all that kind of stuff. Like, you better not show yourself around here again, you little wimp, or whatever, like the playground bully would say. I don't know. But anyway, it's all just embarrassing, and I think I've said enough about it. Unfortunately, some of the stuff may actually come to pass, and um, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a stupid future.